Good afternoon. My name is Ces Butner, and I have the honor to serve as this year's president of Rotary Club of Oakland. Founded in 1908, the Rotary Club of Oakland is the third oldest Rotary Club of some 35,000 Rotary clubs throughout the world. We are a community of 300 men and women from all walks of Oakland's civic, commercial, and community life committed to the Rotary motto of service above self. I'd like to welcome all of you to our 5,328th club meeting. For 111 years, we have welcomed Rotarians and guests from around the world to our club meetings. We continue to do so virtually, so if you're a visiting Rotarian or if you're a guest of a Rotarian, please let us know by typing in your name and the name of your club into the chat box located at the center bottom of your screen, as indicated by the red on the slide. By doing so, we'll be able to recognize you later in this meeting. Also, we recommend all participants view this Zoom meeting by clicking the speaker view button located in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And if you have comments throughout the meeting or questions for the speaker, please use the chat button at the bottom of the screen for that as well. And now for our thought for today, Rotarian Gary Flaxman.
Thank you, President Ces. Today's thought is to those who have spent time, energy, and passion towards something they genuinely care about. This is a quote from a college professor who wouldn't let me into his oversubscribed class 35 years ago. His name was James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. People are trapped in history, and history is trapped in them. Anyone who has ever struggled with poverty knows how extremely expensive it is to be poor. It is certain in any case that ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for setting the tone for our meeting with that reflective and pensive thought. Because we want to remain grounded and focused, we begin our meetings by jointly reciting our vision, which is, together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. All right. Hope you enjoyed last week's meeting. Where we had Terrence Brewer, a local award-winning artist, perform and discuss how music and artists have changed in this COVID period. Maybe the next time he can rise, he can perform a little more. I really loved his music. I thought it was great. This week, we will continue our Black History Month celebration by reaffirming our commitment to further our understanding and participation in diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts throughout club management, committee chairs, and members. I'm excited about it and can't wait to share it with you. But finally, I always want you to remember my challenge you for the second half of the year, bring in a new member so we can get back to the 300 members. Many of you have stepped up, but we all want to bring in a new member and share what Rotary service above self does for all of us. So sit back and enjoy another great Civic Thursday meeting where you can catch a great speaker and get involved in a Rotary where service above self exists. Past District Governor Ed Jelen, do we have any visiting Rotarians or guests?
Indeed we do, President Ces. First, as a visiting Rotarian, we're happy to welcome back Diane Dorn, past president of the Rotary Club of San Leandro. So always nice to have Diane with us. As far as guests go, CJ Hirschfeld has brought her friend to be with us today, Lois Corin. So nice to have you with us, Loris. And then finally, but certainly not leastly, Bob Peltz has some very nice guests with us today. Has Libby Peltz with Jay Rosenblatt and also wife Linda Peltz. So welcome to all the Peltzes. Nice to have you with us.
All right. Thank you, Ed. And welcome to all of the guests. Past President Jack McAvoy, I believe you have a special reintroduction of one of our longtime members.
I do, Seth. Thank you. One of the greatest things about Oakland Rotary is the people you meet and get to know. It is my honor today to reintroduce everyone to a 41-year member of Oakland Rotary. He and his sister were born and raised in Brooklyn in the 30s. His father owned a small business in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and announced that he was tired of commuting and moved the family there. It was actually a great move for today's honoree, as he spent his high school senior year there and went on to Rutgers University just a few miles from home. He made the freshman tennis team, but had to quit so he could pay his way through Rutgers selling shoes. He graduated in 4 years and went to Ellington Air Force Base in Houston, Texas for flight school, where he excelled and became a navigation instructor. Moving to Hamilton Air Force Base in Nevada in 1955 and eventually to Travis in Fairfield. During these years, he taught former World War II and Korean War navigators how to navigate the newer transport aircraft. Later, he flew 3,000 hours with 40 hours of combat missions in Vietnam. The large transport planes were used to pick up wounded soldiers in Vietnam and return them stateside, flying from Travis to Hickam to Clark to Wake Island to Vietnam, and then returning to Japan, then Hawaii, then Travis. He spent 33 years on active reserve in the Air Force, retiring as lieutenant colonel. He went to work for Crocker Bank in 1958 as a management trainee, eventually managing the Crocker Bank in the new Transamerica building in San Francisco, and then the Oakland main branch. Crocker was bought by Wells Fargo in 1986, and they promptly fired everyone over 50, something that could be done then. Bob had numerous offers from other banks and settled on Civic Bank of Commerce, founded by former Oakland member Claude Hutchison. Civic was bought by City National Bank, and Bob retired there after a 45-year banking career. He also taught business and banking at City College of San Francisco for 30 years. Bob was married in 1956 and has 2 children, Jay, who is a solar energy expert who lectures all over the world, and Libby, who is a successful veterinarian. Because of the challenges so many faced, even then, with college debt, Bob made sure that both children had no debt on graduation. He met the love of his life in the late 70s and married Linda in 1981. One of Bob's greatest contributions is that he introduced Linda to tennis. She raised millions of dollars chairing the Altabate Summit tennis golf tournaments for many years, and was named to the Northern California Tennis Association Hall of Fame in 2019. She still plays 4 times a week. Although Bob and Linda lost their home in the Oakland Hills fire in 1991, he continued his service to others, serving on the Oakland Police Retirement Board, the board of the American Institute of Banking, the Oakland Parking Authority, San Francisco Civil Defense Board, and he is past president and treasurer of the Air Force Association of the Greater Bay Area. He joined Oakland Rotary in 1980. He served on the Oakland Rotary Board, the Oakland Rotary Endowment Board, is an ORE patron, a Paul Harris Fellow, as are Linda and his daughter Libby. He chaired the sports committee with past President Dan Lazar for many years and still plays golf. Please join me in recognizing a teacher, a banker, a military man, a community servant, and an athlete with more than 30 years in every area. I'll ring the bell for Oakland Rotarian Bob Peltz.
We have to do this virtually sometime.
Say a few words, Jack?
Go, Bob.
Okay, I just would like to thank 2 bell ringers. One for Jack for the good work that he did with as little that he had to work with, and also for Dudley Thompson, a darn good golfer who is going to be our next president. So for these 2 guys, I would like to ring the bell, and if he would send me a bill, I'll then send him a check.
And I would like to ring the bell also in honor of my husband, Bob.
Oh, very nice. Thank you. Wow. It's always interesting to have the reintroductions, but particularly for longtime members that we had like you, Bob. Thank you so much for that introduction, Jack, and Bob, many wishes to you. All right. David Stein. I think you have a new member to introduce for us with Rotary with two interesting facts.
President Ces, fellow Rotarians and guests, it's my honor to introduce our newest member, Steve Hart. Steve is the owner of Advantage Microsystems, providing outsourced IT services to small businesses and not-for-profit. He lives in Oakland with his wife, Elizabeth, and their daughter, Cora, and son, Ronan. Two interesting facts. One, Steve and his wife are big Cal Bear fans, particularly Cal football, to the point where when Elizabeth went into labor during the first half of the Cal UCLA game, Steve asked if they should go to the hospital, and she replied, "No, we are winning." Cal won, and then they went to the hospital and their son Ronan was born. Second interesting fact, in addition to being a good golfer, Steve is also a cornhole tournament champion, although that he attributes to luck since he had never played before. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to our newest member, Steve Hart.
Yeah. Steve, we are happy that you have chosen to join us, and please know that your family and friends are always welcome to join us and participate in our projects and events. By accepting membership, you have adopted our vision, and you also agree to conduct your affairs according to the Rotary four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? You will receive your Rotary pin, and we hope you will wear it with pride and find pleasure and fulfillment by attending meetings, participating in our service activities, practicing service above self, and by contributing to the Rotary Foundation and Oakland Rotary Endowment. So now it is my pleasure and privilege and honor to induct you as our newest member of the Rotary Club of Oakland. Let's give our newest member a warm Rotary welcome. And when we're back in person, then we'll have a standing ovation for you. High Adventure Chair, Mark Rosen, I believe you have an announcement.
I do, and I've got 1 minute, so I'm going to make it really short because I don't want to get the bell rung on me. High Adventure is starting something new. We have a fixed cycle ride the third Saturday of every month, and a hike on the fourth Saturday of every month. I sent out an email this morning about the event this coming Saturday over in Corte Madera, riding in the Tiburon. And also in that same email was information about the hike that Robert Kidd will be leading down on the Berkeley Marina the following weekend. We hope to see everyone. These are easy go-to events. They're just for fun. That's why we call it the Easy Peasy. So hope to see everyone there. That's it, Seth. How did I do?
Very good, very good. It's always interesting to keep High Adventure going because it gives us something to do, particularly in this COVID period when we're kind
So
of.
when am I going to see you?
Yeah, I'll be on my Peloton, watching you on the screen. February is Black History Month, and I wanted a moment, if you allow me, to celebrate and remind you that last June, we issued a statement on racism. If you'll recall that, put it up on the screen, which was drafted last year as part of a larger commitment on behalf of the club to address racial and social justice issues, reflects a long journey that the Rotary Club has been on in relation to diversity. Acknowledging that people of color were experiencing widespread discrimination, Rotary International President in 1970 to 71 prioritized bridging the gap, stating the racial gap can be bridged through improving communication and fighting bigotry wherever it may exist. It was around that same time that the club, Rotary Club of Oakland, welcomed its first African-American members. And eventually, when Rotary International decided to allow female members about 10 years later, 7 women were inducted in 1987. Since that time, our club has continued to diversify while developing a deeper understanding of how our integral service work is to combat inequality through supportive literacy in school, entrepreneurship education, academic scholarship, professional mentorship, international service, featured speakers on neighbors who are food or housing insecure. All exactly are our club areas of influence. While the club doesn't presently track diversity-related demographics, we underestimate our current membership to be approximately 30% people of color, 46% female, which is almost twice the percentage of women throughout Rotary International. It's unknown what a percentage of our club might be in LGBTQ or how we break down socially, economically, or generationally, but it's become clear the time has come to step up our efforts to better understand our differences and address the challenges and opportunities of our time. Along those lines, and in support of club's commitment to foster lasting change and to honor Rotary's four key principles, I will be proposing to the club's board of directors that a new diversity, equity, and inclusion committee be created. Its purpose will be to function as an advisory resource so that members, club leaders, staff, and committee chairs can get the support and accountability they need to ensure diversity and equity and inclusion remains a value priority in all that we do. If you would like to be kept in the loop on the formation or the eventual recruitment for this committee, please reply in the chat or email Jesse or me for additional information. Do also consider reviewing the racial and social justice statement I just put up on the screen. Club mindfully drafted last year. A link will be dropped into the chat now to help you find it more easily on our website. Earlier this year, in conjunction with the first five clubs, we had Rotary International first female president, Jennifer Jones, speak to us, and she stated that DEI was one of her main priorities for her year. I stated it as well for my year. In creating this committee, while also having a series of speakers from time to time on this topic, is my way for better informing us of all about racial and social injustice and leading us to a more diverse and inclusive club. I just want to take that time to state that, and today is one of those days, and we'll have Rotarian Celeste Gordon. Will you do the honor of introducing today's Civic Thursday speaker?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very excited, everyone, President Ces, fellow Rotarians, visiting guests. Today I'm introducing Jasmine Rashid. She's graduated with a BA in Peace and Conflict Studies from Swarthmore College, where she also spent her time working as a writer, strategy consultant, and associate at the Lang Center for Civic and Social Responsibility. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of Visibility Magazine, a publication dedicated to showcasing the creative work of traditionally marginalized voices. In 2018, Jasmine became a Congressman John Lewis Fellow through the Humanity in Action Network, where she engaged in issues around civil and human rights for the city of Atlanta. Her senior fellow action project, Real Money Moves, took the form of 3 campaigns, one on educating consumers and investors about the ties that their money may have with private prisons and prison labor. Urging consumers to break up with their banks, this led to institutions such as JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and others to publicly commit to ending their financial ties with private prisons. She also led a campaign against for-profit detention centers at the US-Mexico border, which prompted the forming of the Families Belong Together Corporate Accountability Committee with over 100 grassroots organizations working to end these centers. Another campaign involved influencers such as NFL players, artists, and the cast from Orange is the New Black. These individuals publicly divested from private prison stock, drew attention to the problem, then collectively committed to investing $10 million in community initiatives. She's currently director of advocacy and strategic partnerships at the Candide group that directs capital build upon values of social justice and sustainability. Her work has contributed to impactful and lasting change, and everyone please give a very warm welcome to Jasmine Rashid.
Thank you so much, Celeste. Should I share my screen?
Yes, please. You can share your screen. Thank you.
Great, great. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. It is really such a pleasure to be joining you all today. And like President Seth was saying, happy Black History Month, happy Black Futures Month. I'm particularly excited about today because I'm a resident of Oakland, and I've given this presentation a few times to different organizations, companies around the country. But for this time, I get to focus on financial activist activities that are happening right here at home. And Oakland has, as we know, no small history when it comes to activism, racial justice activism, and just a deep, deep legacy of social justice. And so the concept of financial activism that I'm going to be walking you all through today is really just the consideration of, in our existing social movements, how do we leverage money to aid and be a tool for wealth creation, for really just bringing positive social change instead of a tool of destruction, which I think we've all seen kind of both sides of that coin. And just acknowledging that regardless of whether or not you consider yourself as a financial activist, you're already using your money in one way or another every day to either uplift or undercut communities of color. So I'm speaking, as Celeste mentioned, on behalf of Candide Group. We're an impact investing firm based here in Oakland, as well as I'm the director of Real Money Moves, which is really a nonprofit that focuses on educating the money story behind the story, if you will, for every kind of social campaign, including the private prison work that Celeste mentioned. So before I get into my work, I would love to know who all is in this virtual Zoom room. And I think starting with the understanding that, again, you may not consider yourself a quote unquote activist, let alone a financial activist, but in our communities, in our relationships with our friends, our family, we all serve certain roles, right? And as we continue to build out our ecosystem, like you all do in Oakland Rotary, understanding what your superpowers are, focusing on this idea of abundance as opposed to what we don't have. So I would invite you all in the chat, if you could say where you're writing in from, whether that's somewhere in Oakland or elsewhere, and which of these roles you see yourself mapping onto. So I'll give you a few minutes just to read through, but I would love to hear who our builders are in the room, who our storytellers are. Just think about which resonate most strongly with you, and then use that framework as we move through the rest of this presentation. I'm gonna check the chat if I can. Celeste is a visionary. Great. We have Teresa, who's a storyteller, Stephanie, a combo frontline builder, storyteller, Mary's a guider, Devante is a muralist, which means he's also a storyteller, Gail is a builder, Tom is a builder, Carrie's a guide. You guys are moving so fast and I love it. We're gonna keep these coming in, and I'm gonna continue on with the next few slides. Just a little bit more background. So like I mentioned, I work at Candide Group. It's an impact investing firm. For those who don't know, impact investing is essentially leveraging kind of traditional investing and the tools of private equity and lending, but doing it with a very strict social focus. So we're not just worried about financial return, but often we're really centering what is the social return, thinking about risk, not just in terms of what's the financial risk, but what's the risk of not investing in this particular project or community. And so we like to often frame to our clients and prospective clients, again, your money is always going to be having some effect in the world. So would you like to make your legacy by lifting up other families or by locking up other families, right? As we think about people's portfolios being so embedded in industries like private prisons and fossil fuels. So the first step is really knowing, what are you currently investing in and what do you want to be investing in? What is the world you want to build? And then just a little bit more of some kind of classic power mapping. We can think about our community here in Oakland and the Bay Area more largely. as we go through these strategies, I want you to be conscious of, in your own community, who are the quote unquote enemies, who are the industries, the institutions, the players who, no matter what they do, racial justice is never going to be a focus of theirs. And what are the ways that they're currently undermining racial equity and justice? But then also thinking about who are the allies, who are the people in your community, I like to call them co-conspirators, who have some form of power, whether it be they're in charge of a company's HR policy, or they have connections to a bank. Thinking about who around you is continuing to profit from harm caused in communities of color, while also thinking about who do you have the potential to build with in building this new world that we want to see. So thinking about, I'm right now in downtown Oakland, I'm across from the police station, and I see that there's a bail bonds company. As well-intentioned as that bail bond company owners may be, which I don't know them personally, some of you might on the chat, the business model is premised off of exploitation, right? And so that's in one area where I'm not going to spend my personal energy on reforming, making that bail bond company a little less predatory, because I know that their financial incentive is premised on people being locked up and not having the money to be able to get themselves out, right? But at the same time, I'm thinking about allies. There may be a company in my community who doesn't have very good diversity statistics, but really have been talking about wanting to be more invested in racial justice. So how can I work with them to think through what are the ways they can be supporting community members? What does it look like to institute more quality jobs, et cetera? So just a few examples there. And then the last of this kind of preamble before we get into the actual strategies is to know your own power. It's to really think about, well, first, what ways is your money currently not aligned with your values? Most of us don't know, right? Until we actually take that step to ask either our financial managers or our company who invests our retirement plan or pension funds, knowing where your money currently is and what money do you have the power to influence. So not just about your personal bank account, but whether it's your church, whether it's an organization you're part of as endowment, whether it's your, if you went to university or college, their endowment, what's their endowment investing in? So if there's one thing that you take away from this presentation, just know that you don't have to have a ton of wealth to be able to move wealth. And that's something that, yeah, Celeste thank you so much for bringing up. With the private prison campaign, we were really able to focus on moving these major institutions like JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, who, normally probably wouldn't listen to some grassroots activists. But because we were able to use the language of finance and really be able to tackle their bottom line and saying, here's why this industry is a risk to investors, and be able to use some of that language that's often inaccessible to us, we were able to move about $2 billion that were committed to the private prison industry. Okay, so strategy 1, own your taxpayer status. Know what's on the budget in the ballot in upcoming local elections. Design a people's budget, which is also known as participatory budgeting, is the kind of official name for it. And make sure your representatives are listening to how the community wants to spend its dollars. So a really recent example of this, and this comes from District 2's Nikki Fortunato-Boss, who some of you may know, is that obviously there's been an increase in hate crimes, especially amongst our Asian American community members. Again, I live really close to Chinatown, and I know that there have been some attacks on the elders there. And one of the reactions was that people immediately began to organize and say, okay, how do we prevent this? And how do we continue to keep our community members safe? And what they did was they looked at the local budget. They saw that in December, there were a lot of budget cuts made, and those cuts were made without a formal kind of community advisory board. So they interacted with the mayor, they put pressure on, and they actually were able, I think there was about, I want to say 1.8 million had gone towards public safety that was cut. And some of those cuts had included community liaison foot patrols as alternatives to policing in Chinatown. I think there were 2 members. And so in response to the recent attacks, the community rallied together and were able to get the mayor to reinstate that budget to have the community liaison be back in, as well as make explicit commitments to funding this kind of local level public safety throughout Oakland in different marginalized communities. So it's one of those really beautiful instances where, you know, we have to go through a hard time, but we know that when we all kind of band together and have a clear sense of the numbers, people power works. Some of you in this chat may know the Community Democracy Project. I actually don't know them personally, but I have been learning more about this, this participatory budgeting vision they have, and which, if you go on their website, you can see currently what the Oakland general budget is going towards, right? So we see almost 45% of that entire budget goes to police. And then we have things like all of housing and community development is 0.24%. So what you can do is you can actually go in and play with the numbers, say like, oh, what would a fair budget look like to me? And then it pools your answers with other Oakland community members who are also trying to reimagine a budget. So this is right now not something that's actually being instituted. It's in very developmental stages. But it is something that I think has happened in Vallejo. It's happened in multiple cities throughout the United States in which the people actually have a very, very concrete say beyond just kind of petitioning and going to meetings with their local government, but being able to actually shape the budget and what it goes toward, which is a really, really exciting prospect that is growing a lot in the financial advocacy world. Okay, strategy 2. Another one that Celeste had mentioned in the opening is break up with your big name bank. Switching to a bank that's owned by Black, Indigenous people of color, or opening an account at a community institution that's investing in community well-being. Because we know some of these larger banks, though they may have, you know, diversity programs or do some good in communities, they also have historically been found time and time again to be the biggest perpetrators when it comes to things like predatory lending, right, that have shaped our housing crises, or private prisons. I actually need to update this slide because on February 1st, I believe, Alabama's Regions Bank actually pulled out their commitment to private prisons, which is a win that we're celebrating with the Families Belong Together Coalition. Yeah, and some examples of other places that your money can really be. I'm to quote my colleague Morgan Simon, we often think when we put our money in the bank, it's not just sitting in the back somewhere, right? It's actively being lended out to industries that either we're really excited about, or again, like your fossil fuels, your guns, your industries that you normally wouldn't invest in or spend money at. And yet when it goes in the bank, we sometimes forget that it's our money at the end of the day. So I'm thinking about here in Oakland, there's Self-Help Credit Union. There's a ton of other credit unions that are more focused explicitly on investing in local community development and having that community development be equitable, informed by the people who were there. On a larger scale, during the summer when there was a lot of outcry following the brutal murder of George Floyd, we know a lot of corporations, right, made commitments saying we're going to prioritize racial justice or equity, but there weren't a lot of actions. And so there's been a lot of pressure from activists to actually see these corporations who made these major pledges to start moving some money. And so Netflix is an example that I like to bring up where they actually kind of put their money where their mouth is and were able to move, they shifted $25 million of their funds into Black economic development initiatives, including 10 million to Hope Credit Union, which is a credit union that through Candide Group we invest in, that is essentially, to simplify it a little bit, they lend to a community development financial institution like Hope Credit Union, and that community development financial institution lends to the small business owners, lends to the local farmers, the folks who are really just community members who have been there and who are the backbones of the economies, with the understanding that the local community development institutions know way better about who needs money, who's going to do what with it, than a major bank sitting in the Bay Area, right? So getting really local, trusting people that they know what's best for them, that the people closest to the problem are often closest to the solutions, and influencing our corporations to put our money into those localities. Okay, third It's one of my favorites. It's be a conscious consumer. Know your dollar matters and seek out and support the businesses that are making our community more full. This is another chance where I would love to invite you all in the chat to just drop your favorite businesses, your favorite Black owned, Asian owned, Latinx, Indigenous owned small businesses, whether they're restaurants, shops. Let's see what I put on the slide. People of Color Small Business Network was recently started by the Alliance for Community Development. And I know they're just starting up, but I know that they're really trying to provide technical support as well as financial support to our small businesses of color. Oakland Indie Alliance, I know, has been doing a fund in the wake of COVID, trying to help some of our small businesses survive. And then what's beautiful is that it's now easier than ever to figure out what is owned by who. So again, in the wake of a lot of the uprisings this summer, a lot of apps were created to be able to more easily identify and support Black-owned businesses in our communities. So Shade was made by a friend of mine. It's really, really cool. Eat Okra is specifically focused on Black-owned restaurants. So one thing I try to do, and when to challenge myself, is I'm thinking about getting a birthday gift for a friend, or I'm celebrating, the end of a long week and I want to go get a drink. Can I do it from a Black-owned restaurant, or a small business that's selling candles? So getting creative in where you're spending your money and knowing that even if it's a purchase that's $5, $10, it's better off in our local community than maybe in Amazon's pocket. So, okay, yeah, keep throwing those in the chat. We love those. Awesome. The fourth strategy is around divestment. Which essentially means that you're screening out and taking your money out of companies, like I mentioned before, that are causing explicit harm to communities of color, whether that's through their business model, again, industries like that are focused on maybe militarization. And so another byproduct of this summer, I think, that I'm really excited about in our world of investing has been a lot of research around who's doing what, essentially. So there's the RISE Fund has made it a list that explicitly excludes any companies that profit. So for example, not just thinking about private prisons, but also like who are the telecommunications agencies that are jacking up prices inside prisons? Who are the ankle monitoring companies? Who's profits from people being stopped and deported at the border? Who are their surveillance companies? So it goes through, and they're really easy to use tools, just so you can look at your own investment portfolio, again, yours or the company you work for or the institution that you attend, and see where you want to start moving out some of your money. Let me see how I'm doing on time. Okay, I won't go through this in the interest of time. Actually, quickly, just to give you guys a little demo. This is a really great tool made by our friends at the American Friends Service Committee, where a big wall that people often come across is like, again, when you have things like mutual funds, like I don't really know what a mutual fund is. I know it's kind of a conglomeration of different stocks. I just kind of do whatever my coworkers are doing or my family members are doing. But they've made it so that it's really easy to identify which companies are involved with border companies, which ones are socially responsible. So definitely encourage you guys to take a look through this list and just help get oriented around who you don't want to be investing in any longer. So the opposite side of that coin is to own your shareholder status. So again, if you have any kind of stock in a company, you're a part owner of that company. And so if it doesn't feel right for you, for whatever reasons, to take your money out of that stock, to divest from that stock, you also have the ability to own your shareholder power and interact with changing policies at that company. So if you have if you are an institution you're connected to, has at least $2,000 worth of stock in a company whose practices aren't currently aligned with racial justice, for example, you're able to file or co-file what's called a shareholder resolution, which essentially is like a 500 or so word document that lists out what you want to see change. Maybe again, it's around diversity in leadership, or it's around getting better paid maternal or paternal leave, just things like that that kind of go along with best practices for companies. And so these resolutions aren't binding and that there has to be a vote on them, but the more people who sign on to these letters, the more likely that leadership has to address it. And we've seen so many instances in which shareholder resolutions have been filed by just everyday people who don't even work at these companies or have stock in these companies, but maybe know someone, or they've just gone through organizations like As You Sow or Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility, who are able to, who help shareholders vote what's called their proxies. Because again, if you're a shareholder of a company, you have that power that I think many people forget that you have. And so this is a really good way to, just be more active in kind of the corporate sphere. And we've seen massive wins throughout history in terms of, this is how a lot of companies started ending their anti-LGBTQ discrimination before that was a mandate by the government, and so on and so forth. Strategy 6, this one tends to be pretty overwhelming because we know there's so much need. So I'm going to actually focus a little bit more on types of donations as opposed to which orgs. I had to pull in a few just because I was excited to have them on here. So you'll see the Runway Projects, which is a Black-owned organization that is trying to help particularly Black entrepreneurs close what's called the friends and family gap in investing. So in order to start a small business, you kind of need some seed money, which oftentimes people who have inherited wealth, they again get from friends and family. So the Runway Project tries to bridge that gap so that people who have a great business idea aren't struggling to get it off the ground and can get the same kind of opportunity as everyone else. So they're an organization that you can invest in as well as donate to. East Oakland Collective, some of you may know. I try to attend their Feed the Hood programs, and they've just done a wonderful, wonderful job of really community-based power, especially during COVID. I know they've had an initiative for our unhoused folks around, I think it was called Hotels Not Graves. So trying to help homeless folks just get secure housing, and during this pandemic, and knowing that it has a benefit for all of us. This image around Give Shumi. So we are on Ohlone lands. That's the indigenous land that's unceded. And so there's now a way where you can actually pay a tax to the indigenous folks who are inhabitants of this land historically. And so instead of just giving a one-time donation, you can actually have it be like an annual or quarterly donation that's made on behalf of your company or you as an individual or your family. It's just another way to have donations be something that's a little bit more sustainable and long lasting, as opposed to just a one-off check, which are great. But again, thinking about what works for you and your personal account. And then I also just pulled a tweet from a friend who I thought was really wonderful. She started a reparations fund with her family, which I think is essentially just a rotating donation pool. But I think it was interesting for her to explicitly name reparations as the frame there, right? So thinking about her family, who I know is mixed race, but may have gained wealth on the behalf, like many of us, of particularly Black and Indigenous Americans in the United States. And so the donations that she and her family provides are specifically going towards undoing a little bit of that historical extraction. 7, invest. This is what I geek out about the most, of course, because I work in impact investing. But essentially just making sure you're able to seek out companies and funds that empower communities in your investment portfolio, or influence the investment process for an institution you're connected to. So opposite of divestment. Some ones that I wanted to pull out here: East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative, some of you may know. They're doing a lot of work to combat gentrification here in the town by investing and taking money off of the speculative market so that it can in perpetuity be owned by community members in a cooperative structure. It's interesting because this feels very new, but if you look at throughout the world, this is very, very common practice, having cooperatively run communities and villages and so on. That is now, I think, just starting to really catch on in different parts of the United States. But it is one of the main driving forces that we've seen be the antithesis to housing crises and speculative booms and having private equity companies and hedge funds come in and buy up land, which they have been doing during the coronavirus as so many people have been struggling to afford their properties. We're seeing these corporations come in, and sadly, we know exactly what it looks like when these companies come in and build the high rises, as opposed to having the people who have been there for generations. So East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative is something that you can actively become a member of and invest in. I also want to flag C-Note, they're based here. So that's an online platform where you can invest in small business owners, particularly through a racial justice lens, and get your return of $1 or $2, where we think about, oh, maybe that's not investing, but compared to just having your money in a savings bank, right, where you're only getting a tiny, tiny fraction of interest back, this is a way to support local businesses while also making sure that that money is stable and you're able to, what we call liquidity, get it back quickly. And the last one I want to flag is Social K. So that's actually a Candide group. We have the process last year or 2 years ago now of switching our retirement plan, our 401k plan, to be socially responsible. So I saw some people in the chat mentioning ESG, environmental social governance. So that's a screen that you can use, again, to just make sure that the way that you're building your long-term future is premised off of building other communities up, as opposed to fossil fuels. I keep going back to private prisons because it's the one that I know the most closely. And so Social K is just one company that's, or advisor that's popped up to help people explicitly shift their portfolios. I'll just give a few investments that Candide Group has locally. We have about 90 total, and these are a few that are actually here, which I'm excited about. Barrett Kohler Publishers, some may know. Maven, Red Bay Coffee, I saw some people already mentioned in the chat, which is awesome. Len Street, Firebrand Artisan Breads, they're doing a lot of work around, I believe, a cooperative ownership model, but as well as hiring explicitly people who are formerly incarcerated, because we know that's a really big barrier in the racial wealth gap. So I also have to share this because we're advisors, and so because we work in the world of investing, we have to follow all the same rules as the investors who only care about financial returns, which we always think is really funny because our way of measuring success is primarily through social returns, which there's not any like good regulatory rules around yet because it's a growing field. But this is just a way to tell you guys to check out all of our investments if you would like to on our website. A few more that I'll highlight just while I'm here that I'm really excited about. So when we think about investing in equity, we're not just thinking about the final product or service that comes of a company, right? We're thinking about, if this is a solar company, is this a company that has, a real example is there's a company that is hiring former coal workers to now work in solar installations as a part of the transition to a just and equitable economy and a green economy. Is there not just diversity among employees, but actual leadership? Is it building wealth for folks in ways that are very tangible to the community? So you could have a solar company and it could be a horribly extractive solar company, even though the end product is great, right? So thinking about the practices of, does everyone have a living wage as opposed to just a minimum wage? Do people have the opportunity for advancement? And thinking through kind of all these different steps that go beyond just kind of what you see, but everything behind the scenes is equally as important to social justice and racial justice. Supply chains, thinking about, you might have a great product, but where did it come from originally? Was there slave labor involved in that production? So we really do the work of vetting kind of every step of the company to make sure that every policy and practice is aligned with racial justice. And I am coming up on time, so very quickly, the last piece, the last strategy is more than money, which we often will refer to as mutual aid. very, very alive and well in Oakland. And it's just the idea of things like, well, I'll give a historical example that people know. The Black Panther Party were on the forefront of mutual aid when it came to free breakfast programs, so much so that it threatens the federal government, at least in Chicago, where when they opened free breakfast programs, the police then came and urinated on all the food because they saw how much this was a threat, because the community could then become self-sustainable. Mutual aid is a huge, huge threat to a lot of the corporations and institutions that rely on racial injustice and segregation in their practices. And so some other examples of that are, we think about even small scale community gardens, community fridges. A lot have been coming up in Oakland, I've been seeing. And just ways that instead of kind of the charity model is important, but I think inherent in that is the power dynamic of I have, you don't, I will give to you, and it is a gift. It is, there's a power dynamic embedded there, whereas mutual aid is more reliant on the idea that we are inherently interconnected and we need one another. And I am going to support you, your family, your needs, because that's what community members do. And so with this, financial activism is not just about finance, it's about ways that we can use kind of all the tools in our toolkits that we have and support one another. The last slide I will leave you with. So this is a super high view overview of financial activist strategies. I'm really excited that I've gotten a few grants to actually build this out into a playbook with IDEO.org. It was recently announced on Teen Vogue. So IDEO is a human-centered design, and basically they help make tools that allow people, no matter what their background is, to actually use and understand things like, again, if you want to break up with your bank, here's the exact steps that you can take. If you're interested in investing, here's what that means based on your particular financial status. So I'm really, really excited to partner with them and build this out into a comprehensive book. And right now, what I'm offering folks, kind of in the spirits of mutuality, is that if you donate any amount to the campaign, even if it's $5, $10, you will be securing your pre-order of the book. You will be securing. I'm hoping that I would love everyone to get hard copies. I think right now, the donation of any side is going to secure you an e-copy. But this is a way that I want people to be able to really tangibly invest in this product that, like everything I said today, is not necessarily my knowledge. It's a accumulation and curation of tons of years and years of financial activists doing work on the ground. And these funds will also go towards me being able to compensate the individuals who I interview, who are the activists on the ground, who often, you know, their expertise is undervalued. Again, people closest to the problem are those closest to the solution. We don't always treat them that way. We'll often pay a McKinsey and Company, no shade to McKinsey and Company, but to do kind of diversity audits and best practices, when at the same time there's communities of color who are experts on their own realities, and we should be compensating them for that as well. So I will drop that link in the chat if you would like to support and secure your copy. And with that, I think we will open it up to questions.
Thank you, Jasmine. We'll have, I think we only have time for a few questions, but I see one in there from Mike Mallory. Mike, you want to go ahead and ask your question? Or Susie, you could go ahead and do Mike's question.
Okay, sorry, I can't find Mike's question.
I have it, I can get it. So this is about the endowment board, Jasmine, that is looking at developing an ESG investment strategy, but given the breadth of Oakland Rotary's community and international philanthropy, we're concerned about how to identify investment strategies consistent with the board duties. Have you guided other orgs through this process?
Yeah, we have, and actually through our nonprofit Real Money Moves, we're opening up more capacity to be able to do some of that kind of tailored one-on-one support. And also just knowing a lot of other folks who this is their specialty and kind of helping some of those endowment audits. So yeah, I'm happy, I'll maybe drop my email in the chat, happy to connect if that's something that I can potentially collaborate on. And I'm excited that you're excited about it.
Yeah. Okay, and then there was another question about what the minimum requirement of investing is for your organization.
So for us, because we're a boutique firm who works with ultra high net worth investors, we've historically been kind of around it's a big gap, but the 5 million to 500 million mark. So we definitely understand that we are not for everyone. And that's actually why we built out the nonprofit Real Money Moves, so that we can work with what's called unaccredited investors, kind of the everyday people who, that's where my passion lies as someone who doesn't come from a technical finance or wealth background. So at this time, we're small and mighty. We're a team of 8 and only working with some of those high net worth families, but are really hoping to bring some of these strategies to folks who may not be able to meet that client minimum.
Okay, and then Gary comments that his mother went to Swarthmore and the Quaker spirit and social consciousness is alive and well with you.
I love that, Gary. I actually went to go study economics at Swarthmore and promptly switched out because I didn't understand how you could talk about money and not talk about food. So I was really be able to conflict studies, which is now, I think Swarthmore was the first place to have a peace and conflict studies major, and I think has been growing a lot over the years. And so I'm so excited to always check in with Swarthmore and definitely credit them for kind of opening my mind to what's possible in terms of the world of social justice.
Hey, Jasmine, I'm Will. As a graduate of a Quaker high school located near Swarthmore, I congratulate you on pursuing the Quaker tradition in the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate you saying that.
Any other questions we have? Thank you so much, Jasmine, for being our speaker today. This year, our club is making homeless crisis in Oakland a priority. To that end, and as our gift to you for being our speaker for the day, in your honor, we are making a donation to support our unhoused residents in Oakland. Additionally, we would like to give you our Centennial book, which documents 100 years of service and friendship in the third oldest club in Rotary world. Again, thank you, Jasmine, for being our speaker for today.
Thank you so much. It's truly been an honor.
President-elect Mary Young, I believe you have an announcement for us.
Yes, thank you. Again, everyone, Kung Hei Fa Choi. So in celebration of Lunar New Year 2021, Year of the Ox, the Entertainment Committee is proud to host Cooking and Tea with the President tonight from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Henry Poon, an insurance man by day and a passionate chef by night, will show us how to make hand-seared black tiger prawns and brew a great cup of tea, Chinese tea. Henry has provided a list of ingredients and tea leaves that you could gather ahead for you to make after the cooking demonstration. And Jessie has sent out the Zoom link already. And Henry has now provided me a recipe so that, so that it's not out of sight, out of mind how to make the prawns. So I will send it to Jessie to send it to you tonight. So Papa, happy to see you tonight. Go ahead, Fatima.
Thank you, Mary. Jesse, will you tell us about the speaker for our next Civic Thursday meeting?
Barbara?
You're muted, Jesse.
Sorry, thank you. Next week, we have the first round of district's Richard King speech contest that Barbara Berry and Alex Kafta has been working on. We have 4 students doing speeches coming from Oakland Charter, Ames American Indian Model School, Alameda High, and Mission San Jose. It's a timed 5-minute speech, and the topic is how Rotary opens opportunities, and the speeches are judged by fellow Rotarians. This is round 1, the club level, and the winner of this goes to the next round, which is the Area 1 round, and there's 2 more rounds that end up in the district, and the district winner receives a $1,000 award, and there's cash awards on every round. I've been told that the speeches are fun and with some surprising twists. So I hope everyone will join us for this interesting meeting next week.
That'll be a different meeting, but we annually have that, and it's a very interesting meeting to hear some of the young students with their speeches. Thank you, Gary, for that wonderful thought for today. Thank you, Mark, for keeping us informed on the actions of high adventure. Thank you, Jack, for reintroducing Bob Peltz. And thank you, Celeste, for introducing our fantastic speakers. And welcome to our newest member, Steve Hart. Jesse, before I wrap up this meeting, do we have any bell ringers?
We had 13 bell rings.
All right.
Dudley rang the bell twice, one for Bob and one's for his wife. You rang the bell for Bob. Will Hobbs rang the bell for Bob. Jack McAvoy rang the bell for Bob. Linda and Jim Bosnicker rang the bell for Bob. Stephanie Kazenza rang the bell for Bob. Bob rang the bell for Jack McAvoy and Dudley in Dudley's golf. Bob's wife rang the bell for himself. Michael Bruck rang the bell for Bob. Bob Barth rang the bell for Bob. And Keith Urete rang the bell for the diversity efforts that you're putting forth with the club.
So we have 13 bell ringers for the day, $1,300 for the Oakland Rotary Endowment. An endowment which is looking to make sure they financially invest in the right companies. Might be use your help, Jasmine. So I'd like to end this meeting as we always do, and that's the way it went at the 5,328th club meeting on February 18th, 2021 at Oakland Rotary number 3, the third oldest Rotary club in the world. Everyone remember, Rotary opens opportunities for service above self. And for now, this meeting of the Rotary Club of Oakland is adjourned.